Okay, let's dive into this. We all absolutely know that sound, that sharp, incredibly satisfying, or, to some people, incredibly cringy pop that happens when you bend your fingers just the right way. It's this auditory and tactile mystery that most of us experience literally every single day. Whether you're sitting at your desk getting ready to type an email, or maybe stretching your hands out after a super long drive, cracking your knuckles is just a universally recognized habit. But what is actually creating that sound? Well, today in this explainer, we're exploring the very real, very weird science behind why your joints pop, and we're going to finally separate the anatomical facts from the childhood fiction.
But hey, real quick before we get too deep into the microscopic biology of our hands, just a fast disclaimer. This explainer is strictly for general educational purposes. It is absolutely not medical advice. If you're experiencing real joint pain when you crack your knuckles, or if you just have ongoing concerns about your joints in general, please make sure to consult a healthcare professional. All right, with the housekeeping out of the way, let's get right back to the fun stuff.
So what is really happening when you crack your knuckles? I want you to just imagine that sensation right now for a second. You interlock your fingers, you push your palms outward, and pop, pop, pop. It kind of feels like you're snapping something back into place, or maybe breaking these tiny little bubbles of tension. But here is the crazy thing. Your bones aren't snapping, your cartilage isn't grinding, and your ligaments definitely aren't tearing. So what's the exact physical mechanism taking place inside your own joints to produce such a loud, echoing noise? To figure that out, we have to look at your anatomy. First off, your joints don't just exist as dry bones rubbing together. They're actually surrounded by a protective capsule and cushioned by this incredible biological lubricant called synovial fluid. Think of it kind of like the motor oil for your body. And here's the fascinating part. This synovial fluid is absolutely packed with dissolved gases, primarily nitrogen. Which brings us to a really fun word, tribonucleation. I know, it sounds like something straight out of a science fiction movie, right? But thanks to real-time MRI studies that have literally captured our joints in action, scientists have documented this exact process happening in our hands. Tribonucleation is basically just the scientific term for the process of gas bubble formation inside that fluid. Let's move to and see how this builds across the exact microscopic sequence of a knuckle crack. Because it's an incredible chain reaction. Step 1. When you stretch, pull, or bend the joint, you are physically pulling that joint capsule apart and expanding the space inside of it. Moving to step 2. Because the volume of that space suddenly increases, the pressure inside the synovial fluid rapidly drops. Step 3. Thanks to that sudden drop in pressure, the dissolved nitrogen gas we just talked about rapidly rushes together to form a bubble. And finally, step 4, where the magic happens. In a fraction of a second, that gas bubble collapses in on itself. That collapse, the popping of that nitrogen bubble, is exactly what creates that loud pop sound you hear.
And this whole mechanism brings us to a very specific number, 20. Have you ever noticed that once you crack a specific knuckle, you just cannot get it to crack again immediately, no matter how hard you bend it or pull on it? Well, that's because it takes exactly 20 minutes for those tiny nitrogen gas particles to slowly dissolve back into the synovial fluid. Basically, the joint needs time to reset. Until that joint capsule resets itself over that 20-minute window, the pressure dynamics inside the fluid just aren't right to form and collapse another bubble.
So now that we understand the incredible physics behind the pop itself, we have to address the elephant in the room. Does cracking your knuckles actually cause arthritis? It is for sure the biggest cultural myth surrounding the habit. I mean, we've all had a parent, a teacher, or a well-meaning friend scold us, claiming that every single time we pop a knuckle, we're actively destroying our joints and paving this inevitable road to osteoarthritis in our old age. But is there actual science behind this age-old parental warning?
To answer that, I want to introduce you to one of the most dedicated, informal self-experiments in the history of medicine. A physician named Dr. Donald Unger decided to test this parental warning on his very own body. For over 60 years, day in and day out, he habitually cracked the knuckles on his left hand. Meanwhile, he left his right hand completely alone, never cracking it, just preserving it as his untouched control group. And after 60 decades of this daily routine, the results were totally conclusive. There was absolutely no difference in arthritis between his two hands. His left hand was just as healthy as his right.
Honestly, his sheer dedication was so legendary that Dr. Unger's 60-year self-experiment actually earned him the 2009 Ig Nobel Prize. That's an award given to scientific achievements that, first make people laugh and then make them think. It's a hilarious and brilliant footnote in medical history. But, crucially, we don't just have to rely on one man's lifelong dedication to popping his left hand. Over the years, much larger epidemiological studies have taken a deep dive into this topic. And their extensive data fully backs up Dr. Unger's conclusion. The scientific consensus is totally clear. There is no strong scientific link between habitual knuckle cracking and osteoarthritis. Section 10, the one catch, grip strength. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the nuance. While arthritis isn't a risk and you certainly aren't grinding away your cartilage, there is a tiny bit of nuance we need to cover to get the full picture. Some mixed research actually suggests that habitual, long-term knuckle cracking might lead to a tiny, subtle reduction in your grip strength over time. It's a small caveat for sure, but it's an important piece of the puzzle when we look at all the available data. So let's bring all this research together and summarize this scientific consensus. First and foremost, you can cross osteoarthritis off your list of worries. There's no significant link. Second, regarding that grip strength issue we just mentioned, the evidence remains pretty mixed and inconclusive, but it's definitely not considered a serious health risk by any stretch of the imagination. So the true bottom line, for most people, cracking your knuckles is completely biologically harmless. However, it definitely remains highly, highly socially annoying to the people sitting next to you. Which brings us to a pretty fascinating and provocative question to ponder as we near the end of our explainer today. If the pop is biologically harmless, why is society so completely convinced that it's dangerous? It really makes you wonder about human psychology, doesn't it? We seem to hold on to these anatomical myths simply because an action sounds destructive. A loud crack just sounds like damage, even when we now know it's literally just nitrogen bubbles collapsing. It really leaves you questioning, what other physical habits do you have right now that you might be completely misunderstanding?
As we wrap up, just a quick reminder that this explainer has been an exploration of general science and educational content, not medical advice. If your joints hurt or you're experiencing real pain, please go see a healthcare professional. Thank you so much for joining me today to untangle the science from the fiction of the knuckle crack. Keep questioning the world around you, keep exploring those fascinating